Rachel Morgan adjusted her blazer for the third time as she sat in the pristine waiting area of Blackstone Security Solutions, one of Seattle's most prestigious private security firms. The rain drummed against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the downtown high-rise, casting rippling shadows across the marble floor. She'd been out of work for 6 months, her savings dwindling, and this job represented her last real shot at financial stability. Ms. Morgan, a woman in her 30s with perfectly styled blonde hair and a clipboard, approached. "I'm Jennifer Walsh, HR Director. Thank you for coming in today." Rachel stood, extending her hand with a firm shake that spoke of confidence despite her nervous stomach. "Thank you for the opportunity, Ms. Walsh. Please call me Jennifer. Let's head to conference room B for your interview." As they walked through the office, Rachel noted the subtle but unmistakable signs of a serious security operation. Employees wore ID badges with RFID chips. Security cameras were strategically positioned, and she spotted at least 2 armed guards trying to blend in as regular staff members. Conference room B was spartanly furnished, a glass table, 4 chairs, and a whiteboard. Jennifer gestured for Rachel to sit across from her. "So, Rachel, I've reviewed your application, and I have to say your background is interesting." Jennifer opened a manila folder. Bachelor's degree in criminal justice from University of Washington, 5 years of experience in various security roles, excellent references, but there's a 4-year gap in your employment history between 2018 and 2022. Rachel had prepared for this question. "I was serving my country overseas, military deployment. I see that you listed U.S. Army on your application, but you didn't specify your MOS, your military occupational specialty. Can you elaborate?" "Infantry," Rachel said, using the cover story she'd rehearsed. The truth, that she'd been a Marine Corps scout sniper with 12 confirmed kills in Afghanistan and Iraq, wasn't something she could discuss with a civilian HR director. Jennifer made a note. "And you achieved the rank of sergeant." "Staff sergeant," Rachel corrected. "Excellent. Now this position is for a senior security consultant. You'd be responsible for threat assessments, security protocol development, and client protection details. The starting salary is $75,000 with full benefits and potential for advancement." Rachel tried not to let her relief show. After months of rejections and dwindling bank accounts, this job felt like a lifeline. "I'm very interested," she said. "Wonderful. Now I just need to complete some standard paperwork." Jennifer pulled out a tablet and began typing. Full legal name, Rachel Elizabeth Morgan. Social security number? Rachel rattled off the digits. Date of birth? March 15th, 1995. Any distinguishing marks, scars, or tattoos that might be relevant for security clearance purposes? Rachel hesitated. She had several tattoos, but most were easily concealed, except for one. "And I have a small tattoo on my left wrist," she said carefully. "Can you describe it?" "It's a military unit symbol." Jennifer looked up from her tablet. "Would you mind if I took a photo for our records? It's standard procedure for security clearance documentation." Rachel's heart rate spiked. The tattoo on her wrist wasn't just any military symbol. It was the distinctive crosshairs and dagger of the Marine Corps Scout Sniper School, with her confirmed kill count represented by small hash marks that only another sniper would recognize. "I'd prefer not to," Rachel said. "I understand privacy concerns," Jennifer said with a professional smile, "but it's really just a formality. We photograph all identifying marks for our security database." Rachel realized she was trapped. Refusing would raise suspicions and likely cost her the job. Agreeing would expose her true military background to scrutiny she wasn't prepared for. "Of course," she said finally, rolling up her left sleeve. The tattoo was small but intricate. A set of crosshairs, overlaid with a Marine Corps K-bar knife, surrounded by 12 tiny hash marks that looked like decorative elements to the untrained eye. To someone who knew what to look for, it was a confirmed kill count that marked her as one of the deadliest snipers in the Corps. Jennifer held up her phone to photograph the tattoo, But as the image appeared on her screen, her expression changed. The professional smile faltered, replaced by confusion, then concern. "Excuse me for just a moment," Jennifer said, standing abruptly. "I need to verify something with our security department." She left the room, taking her phone with her. Through the glass walls, Rachel could see Jennifer in the hallway, speaking urgently on her phone while looking at the photo she'd just taken. Rachel's military training kicked in. Something was wrong. Jennifer's body language had shifted from friendly HR professional to someone dealing with a potential security threat. Her shoulders were tense. She kept glancing back at the conference room, and she was speaking rapidly into her phone. After 10 minutes, Jennifer returned with 2 men. One was tall and broad-shouldered with the bearing of former military. The other was older, wearing an expensive suit, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Ms. Morgan," Jennifer said, her voice now formal and cautious, "this is Marcus Webb, our head of security, and James Blackston, the company's CEO." Rachel stood, extending her hand to each man. Webb's handshake was firm, professional, but she noticed his eyes immediately went to her left wrist. Blackstone's grip was stronger, and he held her gaze with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. "Ms. Morgan," Blackstone said, "would you mind if we asked you a few additional questions about your military service?" "Of course not," Rachel replied, though every instinct was telling her to leave. "Jennifer showed us the photo of your tattoo," Webb said, his voice measured. "That's a very specific piece of artwork. Where did you get it done?" "Camp Pendleton," Rachel answered truthfully. "After graduation." "Graduation from what exactly?" Blackston asked. Rachel felt the walls closing in. These men knew something. The way they were looking at her, the change in Jennifer's demeanor, the sudden presence of the CEO. None of this was standard procedure for a security consultant position. "Basic training," she lied. Webb and Blackstone exchanged glances. A moment of silent communication passed between them. "Ms. Morgan," Blackstone said finally, "I think we need to have a more detailed conversation about your qualifications." The atmosphere in Conference Room B had shifted dramatically. What had started as a routine job interview now felt more like an interrogation. James Blackston sat across from Rachel, his steel-grey eyes studying her with the intensity of someone accustomed to reading people's deepest secrets. "Ms. Morgan," Blackstone began, leaning back in his chair, "I'm going to be direct with you. That tattoo on your wrist isn't something you get after basic training. It's not even something you get after advanced infantry training." Rachel maintained her composure, but her mind was racing. How much did they know? "Sir, I'm not sure what you're implying." "I'm implying," Webb interrupted, "that you're sitting here with the Scout Sniper insignia permanently inked on your skin, along with what appears to be a confirmed kill count, and you're trying to pass yourself off as regular infantry." The words hit Rachel like a physical blow. They knew. Somehow these civilian security contractors had recognized something that most military personnel wouldn't catch. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," Rachel said carefully. Blackston pulled out his phone and showed her the screen. The image was a close-up of her tattoo, but now she could see notations and arrows pointing to specific elements. The crosshairs, the car bar, the hash marks. 12 confirmed kills, Blackston said quietly. "That's what those marks represent, isn't it?" The room fell silent, except for the rain continuing to pound against the windows. Rachel felt exposed, vulnerable in a way she hadn't experienced since leaving the Corps. "How do you know that?" she asked, abandoning her cover story. "Because," Webb said, rolling up his own sleeve to reveal a similar but larger tattoo, "I have one too. Army Rangers, Afghanistan, 2015 to 2019, 14 confirmed." Rachel stared at Webb's tattoo, then looked at Blackstone, who was watching her reaction carefully. "And me," Blackstone said, unbuttoning his shirt cuff and pushing up his sleeve. His tattoo was different, Navy SEAL trident with a sniper's crosshairs, surrounded by hash marks that Rachel couldn't quickly count. 26 confirmed, Iraq, Afghanistan, Somalia. 12 years of service before I started this company. The revelation hit Rachel like a tsunami. She wasn't being interviewed by civilian security contractors. She was sitting across from two elite military snipers who'd transitioned to the private sector. "Jesus," she whispered. "Staff Sergeant Rachel Morgan," Blackstone continued, pulling out a tablet and reading from it. "Marine Corps Scout Sniper School Class 318, deployed to Afghanistan in 2019, Iraq in 2020 and 2021. 12 confirmed kills, including a 1,200-meter shot that eliminated a high-value target in Helmand Province." Rachel's blood ran cold. That information was classified. That shot, taking out a Taliban commander who'd been coordinating attacks on American bases, was part of a black operation that officially never happened. "How do you have access to that information?" she demanded. "Because," Blackstone said, "Blackstone Security Solutions isn't just a private security firm. We're a defense contractor with TSSCI clearance. We work with the Pentagon, the CIA, and other agencies on operations that require specialized skill sets." Webb leaned forward. "Rachel, you weren't interviewing for a standard security consultant position. You were being evaluated for something much more significant." "What are you talking about?" Blackstone stood and walked to the whiteboard, picking up a marker. "3 months ago, we received a contract from a federal agency that I can't name. They need a team of former military snipers for a domestic operation. Something big, something that requires shooters with proven track records and absolute discretion." He drew a rough organizational chart on the board. "We've been quietly recruiting for months. Former Marines, Army Rangers, Navy SEALs, Air Force Special Operations. All snipers, all with confirmed kills, all with security clearances that can be reactivated." "What kind of domestic operation?" Rachel asked, though she was beginning to understand the implications. "The kind that keeps Americans safe, but never makes the news," Webb said. "Counter-terrorism, high-value target elimination, hostage rescue. Operations where failure isn't an option and success can never be acknowledged." Rachel looked at the two men, processing what they were telling her. This wasn't a job interview, it was a recruitment pitch for what sounded like a government-sponsored assassination team. "You're talking about killing American citizens," she said. "We're talking about protecting American citizens," Blackstone corrected. "From threats that law enforcement can't handle through conventional means." He pulled up another image on his tablet, a photograph of a man in his 40s with Middle Eastern features. "Khalil al-Rashid," Blackstone said, "Syrian national, entered the US on a student visa 3 years ago. He's been planning a coordinated attack on Seattle's Space Needle during the New Year's Eve celebration. 3,000 people could die." Rachel studied the photograph. "Why can't the FBI handle this?" "Because al-Rashid has been careful. No direct communications, no weapons purchases, no obvious connections to terrorist organizations. Legally, there's not enough evidence for an arrest, but intelligence sources confirm he's operational and planning to strike in 6 weeks. Webb stood and joined Blackstone at the whiteboard. "This is what we do, Rachel. We eliminate threats that fall through the cracks of the legal system. Clean, precise, untraceable." "You're asking me to become an assassin." "We're asking you to do what you did in Afghanistan and Iraq," Blackstone said. "Protect American lives by eliminating threats. The only difference is the location." Rachel felt the weight of the decision pressing down on her. Everything about this felt wrong. The secrecy, the implications, the casual discussion of domestic assassination. But everything about it also felt familiar. The clarity of mission, the precision required, the knowledge that lives hung in the balance. "What if I say no?" she asked. "Then you walk out of here, and we never had this conversation," Blackstone replied. "No, but you'll also walk out knowing that American citizens are going to die, and you had the chance to prevent it." Rachel looked at her hands, at the calluses that came from years of handling precision rifles, at the small scar on her trigger finger from a piece of shrapnel in Kandahar. "I need time to think about this." "You have 24 hours, Webb said. "And after that, we move forward with or without you." As Rachel stood to leave, Blackstone handed her a business card with only a phone number printed on it. "Rachel," he said, "I know what you're feeling. The moral complexity, the uncertainty, but I also know who you are. You're a warrior, and warriors protect their people regardless of where the threat comes from." Rachel took the card and walked toward the door, her mind reeling. As she reached for the handle, Blackstone spoke again. "By the way, the job pays $200,000 a year, plus full benefits and a $50,000 signing bonus." She paused, but didn't turn around. "Think about it," he said. 24 hours. Rachel's apartment in Capitol Hill felt smaller than usual as she paced between the kitchen and living room, the business card burning a hole in her pocket. Rain continued to streak down the windows of her studio apartment, the Seattle skyline barely visible through the gray afternoon light. She'd been home for 3 hours, and Blackstone's offer consumed her thoughts. $200,000 a year, more money than she'd ever imagined making, enough to pay off her student loans, help her mother with her medical bills, maybe even buy a house. But the cost wasn't financial, it was moral. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother in Spokane. "How did the interview go, honey?" Rachel stared at the message. How could she explain that she'd been offered a job as a government-sanctioned killer, that her military skills, which she'd hoped to leave behind, were suddenly worth more than she'd ever dreamed? She typed back, still waiting to hear. "I'll call you tonight." The lie came easily, a habit from her military days, when operational security meant her family could never know the details of her deployments. Rachel opened her laptop and pulled up the news. The headlines were the usual mix of political drama and international conflicts, but she found herself scanning for anything related to domestic terrorism. A sidebar article caught her attention. "FBI disrupts terror plot in Miami." The article was brief, mentioning the arrest of 3 men planning to attack a shopping mall during Black Friday. Clean, legal, public. Everything that Blackstone's operation wasn't. Her phone rang. The caller ID showed unknown, but something told her to answer. "Hello? Rachel, it's Marcus Webb. We need to meet. I told Blackstone I needed 24 hours. This isn't about the offer. We have a situation. Can you meet me at Pike Place Market in 30 minutes? Rachel hesitated. What kind of situation? "The kind that proves why we need people like you. Coffee shop on the North End, near the flower vendors." The line went dead. 25 minutes later, Rachel walked through Pike Place Market, the familiar chaos of tourists and vendors providing cover as she made her way to the coffee shop. She spotted Webb immediately. He had the unmistakable bearing of someone constantly scanning for threats. "Thanks for coming," he said as she sat down across from him. "Coffee, just answers." Webb slid a tablet across the table. "Look at this." The screen showed surveillance footage from what appeared to be a parking garage. A man was removing something from the trunk of a sedan, something that looked suspiciously like components for an explosive device. "This was taken 2 hours ago," Webb said. "Khalil al-Rashid, the target Blackstone showed you. He's accelerated his timeline." Rachel studied the footage. "Where is this?" "Underground parking garage at the Columbia Center. He's got an apartment on the 40th floor with a direct line of sight to the Space Needle." They call the FBI. "With what evidence? A grainy video of a man handling what might be explosive components?" "His lawyers would have him out in 6 hours." Webb swiped to another image, a technical diagram that made Rachel's blood run cold. It was a detailed schematic for a device designed to disperse chemical agents over a wide area. "Chemical weapon?" she asked. "Worse. Radiological dispersal device, a dirty bomb. He's planning to detonate it during the New Year's Eve fireworks show when the Space Needle area will be packed with families." Rachel felt sick. Thousands of people, including children, gathered to celebrate the new year. A radiological device would create panic, contamination, and potentially hundreds of casualties. "How long until New Year's Eve?" 6 days. But our intelligence suggests he's planning to test the device first, tomorrow night. Webb leaned forward. "Rachel, there are 30,000 people working in that building during the day. If he tests his device there, the FBI has to be able to do something. They're trying, but they need probable cause for a warrant, and they need time to build a case. We don't have time. Rachel stared at the tablet, her military training automatically calculating angles, distances, wind patterns. The 40th floor of the Columbia Center would be a challenging shot from any position in downtown Seattle. "What's the range?" she asked, before she could stop herself. "Depends on the position. Closest clean shot would be from the roof of the Smith Tower, 800 meters, accounting for elevation differences." Rachel had made harder shots. In Afghanistan, she'd taken targets at over 1,000 meters in adverse conditions. But this wasn't Afghanistan. This was downtown Seattle, with civilians everywhere and legal consequences that could destroy her life. There has to be another way. Webb pulled up another image, a photograph of a young girl, maybe 8 years old, holding a balloon and smiling at the camera. "This is Emma Patterson. She's going to be at the Space Needle tomorrow night with her family. It's her first New Year's Eve celebration." He swiped to another photo, a family of 4 at Pike Place Market. The Johnsons. They've got tickets to the observation deck. More photos followed. Families, couples, children, all planning to ring in the new year at Seattle's most iconic landmark. How many photos do you want to see, Rachel? How many faces do you need to put on the people who are going to die if we don't act? Rachel pushed the tablet away. "Stop! This is what we do," Webb continued relentlessly. "We make the hard choices so that innocent people don't have to pay the price for our bureaucratic systems. And what about accountability? What happens when you're wrong? When intelligence is bad, when you kill the wrong person?" Webb was quiet for a long moment. "Then we live with it. But we also live with the knowledge that we tried to do the right thing." Rachel looked around the coffee shop at the ordinary people going about their lives. Tourists taking photos, locals grabbing their afternoon caffeine fix, a mother bouncing a baby on her lap. None of them knew that their safety might depend on a decision she was being asked to make. "What's your story?" she asked Webb. "How did you end up here?" "Same as you, probably. Came home from Afghanistan. Tried to adjust to civilian life, couldn't find work that mattered. Then Blackstone offered me a chance to keep doing what I was good at, protecting people." "And you've never regretted it?" Webb hesitated. "I regret the circumstances that make it necessary, but I don't regret the results." He stood to leave, placing a $20 bill on the table. "The offer stands until midnight, Rachel. After that, we move forward with the team we have. And Al-Rashid. We'll handle it, but it would be cleaner with you." As Webb walked away, Rachel remained at the table, staring at the tablet he'd left behind. The surveillance footage was still playing, Al-Rashid moving methodically through his preparations, unaware that his every move was being watched. Her phone buzzed with another text from her mother. "Praying for you, sweetheart. I know you'll make the right decision." If only she knew what the right decision was. At 11:47 p.m., Rachel stood on the roof of her apartment building, looking out over the Seattle skyline. The Space Needle stood illuminated against the night sky, its distinctive silhouette a beacon that drew millions of visitors each year. In 6 days, it would be surrounded by families celebrating the new year. In 6 days, if Webb and Blackstone were right, it would be the site of a radiological attack that could kill thousands. Her phone showed 11 missed calls from the number on Blackstone's business card. The deadline was 13 minutes away. Rachel thought about her father, who'd served 3 tours in Vietnam and never talked about what he'd done there. She thought about the Marines she'd served with, some of whom had died protecting villages full of people they'd never meet. She thought about the Taliban commander she'd killed in Helmand Province, a man whose death had saved the lives of American soldiers, but had also haunted her dreams for 3 years. At 11:58, she dialed the number. "Rachel," Blackstone's voice answered immediately. "I'm in. Thank you. We brief at 0500 tomorrow. I'll send you an address." Blackstone: "Yes? If I do this, I need guarantees. Full legal protection, complete operational security, and full disclosure about the target and mission parameters." "You'll have it all. Welcome to the team." The line went dead. Rachel stood on the roof for another 20 minutes, watching the city lights twinkle below before going inside to try to get some sleep. She woke up at 4:30 a.m. feeling like she hadn't slept at all. The address Blackstone had sent led her to a warehouse in the Georgetown district, surrounded by industrial buildings and freight rail lines. At exactly 5:00 a.m., she knocked on an unmarked steel door. Webb opened it, already dressed in tactical gear. "Morning, shooter," he said. "Ready to go to work?" Inside the warehouse, Rachel found herself in what appeared to be a sophisticated military operations center. Banks of monitors showed surveillance feeds from across Seattle, digital maps covered one wall, and weapon racks lined another. 3 other people were present, 2 men and a woman, all with the unmistakable bearing of former Special Operations personnel. "Rachel Morgan," Blackstone said, approaching with a tablet in his hands. "Meet your team: Jake Sullivan, former Army Delta Force; Maria Santos, former Navy SEAL; and Tom Chen, former Marine Force Recon." Each operative nodded as they were introduced. Rachel noted the tactical gear, the serious expressions, the way they all carried themselves. These were professionals. "Situation update," Blackstone continued, activating a large wall monitor. "Al-Rashid has moved his timeline up again. We have credible intelligence that he plans to test his device tonight at 11 p.m. The monitor showed a detailed schematic of the Columbia Center and surrounding buildings. "The target has rented apartment 4012 under an assumed name. From that position, he has a clear line of sight to the Space Needle and the surrounding area where New Year's Eve celebrations will take place." Webb stepped forward. "The device he's constructed is a radiological dispersal weapon, radioactive material combined with conventional explosives. If detonated at the Space Needle during peak celebration, casualties could exceed 5,000. "What's the plan?" Rachel asked. "Single-shot elimination," Santos replied. "Clean, precise, untraceable. The shot needs to be taken from a position that provides both clear line of sight and immediate extraction capability." Blackstone activated another display showing potential sniper positions throughout downtown Seattle. "We've identified 3 viable shooting positions: Smith Tower rooftop 800 meters, University of Washington Medical Center 950 meters, or Columbia Center itself from the 45th floor 400 meters. Rachel studied the positions, her mind automatically calculating wind patterns, elevation changes, and escape routes. "Columbia Center is the cleanest shot," she said, "but also the highest risk for extraction." "Agreed," Webb said. "That's why we're going with Smith Tower. You'll have overwatch from Sullivan and Chen. Santos will handle electronic surveillance, and I'll coordinate extraction." "When?" "Tonight. Al-Rashid typically returns to his apartment around 10 p.m. You'll have a window between 10:30 and 11 p.m. to take the shot." Blackstone handed Rachel a rifle case. Remington Model 700, 308 Winchester, modified for urban operations. "Same setup you used in Afghanistan." Rachel opened the case, revealing a precision rifle that was indeed identical to her service weapon. The familiar weight, the custom modifications, even the scope settings were exactly as she'd configured them during her deployments. "How did you—" "We've been planning this operation for months," Blackstone said. "We know your preferences, your capabilities, your service record. This weapon is configured exactly to your specifications." Rachel lifted the rifle, feeling the familiar balance and ergonomics. It was like greeting an old friend, one that had kept her alive through dozens of combat operations. "What about legal protection?" Blackstone handed her a document marked classified. "Presidential Finding 2023-07. This operation has been authorized at the highest levels of government. You're operating under Title 50 authority as a contracted intelligence asset." Rachel scanned the document. It was legitimate, or at least it appeared to be. The language was dense legal text, but the authorization was clear: elimination of domestic terrorist threats through any means necessary. "One more thing," Webb said, activating a final display. "But this is live surveillance of the target. The monitor showed Al-Rashid in his apartment, working with what appeared to be electronic components and containers of chemical materials. He moved with the methodical precision of someone who knew exactly what he was doing. "That's definitely not fertilizer," Chen observed. "Radiological materials," Santos confirmed. "And our contacts at the Department of Energy have confirmed the signatures." Rachel watched Al-Rashid work, noting his movements, his positioning, his routines. This was target analysis, something she'd done hundreds of times before, but never in Seattle. Never against an American resident. Never with the knowledge that she was operating in a legal gray area that could destroy her life if things went wrong. "I need to know," she said, looking at Blackstone. "Have you done this before?" "Domestic operations. 17 times in the past 3 years, he replied without hesitation. "Terrorists, foreign agents, domestic extremists planning mass casualty events. Operations that prevented thousands of deaths. And no legal consequences. None. We operate under full federal authority with complete legal immunity." Rachel looked around the room at her teammates, all of whom were watching her with professional interest, but no pressure. These were people who'd made the same decision she was being asked to make. "All right," she said finally, "let's go stop a terrorist." At 9:45 p.m., Rachel lay prone on the roof of the Smith Tower, her rifle positioned on a bipod with a clear view of the Columbia Center's 40th floor. The Seattle skyline stretched out below her, a carpet of lights punctuated by the iconic silhouettes of the Space Needle and Mount Rainier in the distance. Through her scope, she could see into Al-Rashid's apartment with crystal clarity. He was there, moving around what appeared to be a sophisticated laboratory setup. The intelligence had been accurate. This was clearly not the apartment of an innocent graduate student. "Overwatch 1 in position," Sullivan's voice crackled through her earpiece from his position on a neighboring building. "Overwatch 2 set," Chen reported from the opposite angle. "Electronic surveillance active," Santos confirmed from the operations center. "Target is currently alone in the apartment. No additional heat signatures detected." Webb's voice came through the comm system. "Shooter, you have green light when ready. Target confirmed hostile, device confirmed active." Rachel adjusted her scope, accounting for the 800-meter distance, the crosswind coming off Elliott Bay, and the slight elevation difference between her position and the target. The shot was well within her capabilities, similar to dozens she'd made in Afghanistan and Iraq. But this wasn't Afghanistan or Iraq. This was downtown Seattle, with civilians sleeping in apartments below the target, traffic moving on the streets, and the constant awareness that this operation was happening on American soil. Through her scope, she watched Al-Rashid carefully handling what appeared to be a metallic cylinder. Even from this distance, she could see his methodical movements, the way he treated the object with extreme care. "Radiological material confirmed," Santos reported. "Gamma radiation signatures are off the charts." "Jesus," Sullivan muttered. "How much material does he have?" "Enough to contaminate 6 city blocks," Webb replied grimly. "Shooter, we need to move soon. Intelligence suggests he's planning to transport the device tonight." Rachel steadied her breathing, feeling her heart rate slow as her training took over. This was the moment every sniper knew, the space between decision and action where everything else fell away except the target and the shot. "Movement in the apartment," Chen reported. "Target is approaching the window." Through her scope, Rachel watched Al-Rashid walk toward the large windows that faced the Space Needle. He was carrying the metallic cylinder, along with what appeared to be electronic components. "Clear shot available," she reported. "And take it when ready," Webb confirmed. Rachel's finger moved to the trigger, taking up the slack. At this distance, with these conditions, the shot was almost routine. Center mass, account for wind and elevation, controlled breathing, steady squeeze. But as her crosshairs settled on Al-Rashid's chest, something made her pause. Through the scope, she could see his face clearly for the first time. He looked younger than the intelligence photos had suggested, maybe late 20s, with the kind of earnest expression she associated with graduate students rather than terrorists. Shooter, do you have the shot? Webb's voice pressed. Stand by, Rachel replied. She watched Al-Rashid set down the cylinder and pick up what appeared to be a cell phone. He dialed a number and began speaking, his expression animated, almost excited. Santos, can you intercept that call? Working on it. Got it. He's speaking Arabic, but wait, what is it? He's not speaking to a handler. He's talking to someone named Fatima, telling her about his research project. It sounds like he's talking to his girlfriend about a school assignment. Rachel felt a chill that had nothing to do with the Seattle weather. Research project? She asked. He's excited about some kind of breakthrough. Something about successfully creating a stable isotope for medical imaging. He's telling her he can't wait to show his professor tomorrow. The pieces began falling into place in Rachel's mind with horrifying clarity. The careful handling of radioactive materials, the laboratory setup, the university student visa, the excitement about showing a professor. Webb, I need confirmation on the target ID, she said, her voice tight. What are you talking about? You have positive visual confirmation? I need confirmation that this is actually a terrorist and not a nuclear engineering student working on his thesis. Silence on the comms for several seconds. Shooter, you have your orders. Take the shot. Not until I have confirmation. Rachel, Blackston's voice cut in. We have credible intelligence. From who? What source? How do we know this isn't just a graduate student working with radioactive materials for legitimate research? She kept her scope trained on Al-Rashid, who was now showing the cylinder to whoever he was talking to via video call, his expression proud and academic. The intelligence is classified, but it's solid, Webb insisted. That's not good enough. I'm not taking a shot based on assumptions. Rachel, if you're wrong, thousands of people could die tomorrow night. And if you're wrong, I just murdered an innocent student. Through her scope, she watched Al-Rashid carefully place the cylinder into what she now realized was probably a lead-lined container, standard procedure for safely storing radioactive materials used in research. Santos, what else can you hear from that call? He's talking about defending his thesis next week, something about medical applications for radioactive isotopes. He sounds normal, like a grad student excited about his research. Rachel's blood ran cold. Everything they'd interpreted as terrorist activity could just as easily be explained by legitimate academic research. The careful handling of materials, the laboratory setup, the secrecy, all standard for someone working with controlled radioactive substances. Webb, we need to abort. Negative. The intelligence is solid. What intelligence? Show me one piece of evidence that this man is actually planning an attack and not just working on his master's thesis. Silence on the comms. You don't have any, do you? Rachel continued. And do you have surveillance footage of a nuclear engineering student handling radioactive materials in a laboratory setup, and you've made assumptions about his intentions? Rachel, you're overthinking this. Take the shot. Rachel kept her crosshairs centered on Al-Rashid, who was now cleaning up his workspace with the methodical care of someone who'd been trained in proper radioactive material handling procedures. Negative, she said finally, taking her finger off the trigger. I'm not shooting an innocent man based on assumptions and paranoia. Rachel, if you don't take this shot, she keyed her mic to interrupt Webb. Then we find another way to verify whether he's actually a threat. We do surveillance, we investigate, we gather real evidence. We don't just murder people because they're Middle Eastern and work with radioactive materials. As she watched through her scope, Al-Rashid finished securing his materials and sat down at a desk to work on what appeared to be academic papers. The scene looked exactly like what it probably was, a graduate student working late on his thesis research. I'm coming down, Rachel announced, beginning to pack up her rifle. This operation is based on flawed intelligence and racial profiling, and I won't be part of it. As she prepared to leave the rooftop, her earpiece crackled with Webb's voice, tight with frustration. Rachel, you're making a mistake. Stand down and wait for backup confirmation. No, she replied, slinging her rifle case over her shoulder. I'm done. This whole operation is built on assumptions and prejudice, not solid intelligence. She made her way to the rooftop access door, but as she reached for the handle, Santos's voice cut through the comm with urgent intensity. Wait, I'm picking up new communications, multiple encrypted channels activating simultaneously. Rachel paused, her hand on the door handle. What kind of communications? Coded transmissions. At least 6 different cell phones in the Seattle area just received identical messages. The encryption is military grade. Through her earpiece, she could hear Santos typing rapidly. I'm breaking the encryption now. Jesus Christ. What is it? It's a Go code. Multiple cells just received authorization to proceed with coordinated attacks. Target locations include the Space Needle, Pike Place Market, the ferry terminals, and, oh my God, Seattle Children's Hospital. Rachel felt her blood turn to ice. When? Timestamps show execution in 47 minutes, just before midnight. Webb's voice cut in. Rachel, get back to your position. We need that shot now. But as Rachel looked through her scope at Al-Rashid's apartment, she saw something that changed everything. The young man was no longer working alone. 4 other men had entered the apartment, and they were moving with military precision to set up what was clearly a command center. Multiple hostiles in the apartment, she reported. This isn't a research lab, it's a coordination center. Through her scope, she watched as Al-Rashid opened several large cases, revealing not radioactive research materials, but military-grade explosives and detonation devices. Santos, can you identify the other men? Running facial recognition now. Got matches. Ahmed Hassan, wanted by Interpol for bombing attacks in Paris. Omar Khalil, former Syrian army explosives expert. Malik al-Zahra, coordinated the Istanbul nightclub bombing in 2021. Rachel's training kicked in as she realized the magnitude of what they were facing. This wasn't a lone graduate student. It was a terrorist cell preparing for coordinated attacks across Seattle. Webb, we have a problem. This isn't just one device. They're coordinating multiple attacks across the city. How many targets? At least 6. They're synchronizing timing for maximum impact. Through her scope, Rachel could see Al-Rashid and his team working frantically to prepare multiple devices. The sophistication of their operation was evident. This was a well-funded, professionally planned attack designed to cause mass casualties and maximum terror. New intelligence coming in. Blackstone's voice crackled through the comm. FBI has confirmed terrorist chatter indicating imminent attacks on multiple Seattle targets. Federal response teams are mobilizing, but they won't be in position for at least 30 minutes. We don't have 30 minutes, Rachel replied, watching the terrorists. Preparations accelerate. And DeSantos, can you jam their communications? Working on it, but they're using a sophisticated frequency hopping system. I can disrupt some channels, but not all of them. Rachel made her decision. This was no longer about questionable intelligence or moral ambiguity. These were confirmed terrorists preparing to murder American civilians, including children, at the hospital. I'm taking the shot, she announced, settling back into position with her rifle. Which target? Webb asked. Al-Rashid first. He appears to be the cell leader coordinating the operation. Through her scope, Rachel could see Al-Rashid giving instructions to the other terrorists, pointing at maps and checking timing devices. The apartment was now clearly revealed as a terrorist command center with weapons, explosives, and communication equipment visible throughout. Wind is calm. Range 800 meters. Slight elevation adjustment needed, she reported, settling into her shooting position. Rachel controlled her breathing, feeling her heart rate slow as she aligned her crosshairs on Al-Rashid's center mass. This shot would eliminate the cell's leadership and likely disrupt the coordinated attack. Clear shot available, she reported. Take it, Webb confirmed. Rachel's finger moved to the trigger, taking up the slack. Through her scope, she could see Al-Rashid clearly. No longer a possibly innocent student, but a confirmed terrorist about to unleash death on her city. She squeezed the trigger. The rifle's report echoed across the Seattle skyline as the .308 round crossed 800 meters in less than a second. Through her scope, Rachel watched al-Rashid collapse immediately, the other terrorists in the apartment diving for cover in panic. "Target down," she reported. "Cell leader eliminated." Chaos erupted in the apartment as the remaining terrorists scrambled to continue their preparations without their leader. But the disruption was immediate and devastating to their coordination. "Multiple arrests happening across the city," Santos reported. "FBI teams are hitting the other cell locations based on the communication intercepts." Seattle Children's Hospital reports security teams have detained 2 suspects attempting to enter the building with explosive devices, Webb added. Pike Place Market Security has intercepted a vehicle loaded with bomb-making materials, Blackston confirmed. Rachel remained in position, watching through her scope as federal agents stormed the Columbia Center apartment. The remaining terrorists were taken into custody without further resistance, their weapons and explosive devices secured. "All targets neutralized," Webb announced. "The coordinated attack has been prevented." As Rachel packed up her rifle, she felt the familiar mixture of satisfaction and exhaustion that followed successful combat operations. The shot she'd taken had saved potentially thousands of lives, prevented a coordinated terrorist attack that would have devastated Seattle. But she also felt something else, gratitude that she'd been wrong about al-Rashid being an innocent student. The moral burden of potentially killing an innocent person had been lifted when the truth was revealed. "Rachel," Blackstone's voice came through her earpiece as she prepared to leave the rooftop. "Outstanding work tonight. You've prevented one of the largest domestic terrorist attacks in American history." "Just doing my job," she replied. "No, you did more than that. You questioned the intelligence when it seemed flawed, but you also acted decisively when the threat was confirmed. That's exactly the kind of judgment we need." As Rachel made her way down from the Smith Tower, she could see emergency vehicles converging on the Columbia Center, federal agents coordinating responses across the city, and the normal life of Seattle continuing, unaware of how close they'd come to catastrophe. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Saw the news about police activity downtown. Hope you're safe, sweetheart." Rachel smiled as she typed back, "I'm safe, Mom. Just another night in Seattle." But it hadn't been just another night. It had been the night she'd prevented a terrorist attack and found her new calling. As she walked through the quiet streets toward her car, Rachel realized she'd finally found work that mattered, that used her skills to protect innocent people. The moral complexity would always be there, but tonight had proven that sometimes the hard choices were also the right choices.